interested if you're able to look at the reports that Scott Morrison took on additional portfolios at KFC.
Well, this is extraordinary and unprecedented. And I've asked when I returned back to Canberra, I flew down from Canberra this morning. When I return this afternoon, I'll be having briefings with the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet who are seeking advice on this. Let's be very clear. Australians knew during the election campaign that I was running a shadow ministry. What they didn't know was that Scott Morrison was running a shadow government that was operating in the shadows. What we have when we get sworn in as ministers is that there's some transparency there. A whole lot of questions arise from this. What did Peter Dutton and other continuing members of the now shadow ministry know about these circumstances? How is it that the Australian people can be misled, whereby we know now that Scott Morrison was not only being Prime Minister, but was Minister for Health, was Minister for Industry and Science at the same time as Resources, was the Minister for Finance. And we have the extraordinary revelation that Matthias Cormann apparently wasn't aware that Scott Morrison was the Minister for Finance as well as himself. We all know that Scott Morrison had trouble doing the job that he had. Perhaps it was because he was doing so many different jobs that we didn't know that he had. In Australia, we have a Westminster system of government that produces accountability. This is a sort of tin pot activity that we would ridicule if it was in a non-democratic country. Here in Parliament, I, as leader of my party, and the Peter Dutton now, but Scott Morrison as the former leader of the country, would table the list of ministers. That is not some academic exercise. That is so that people can be held accountable. And how is it that the Governor-General could swear in Scott Morrison into ministerial portfolios without there being a transparency there about that process? This is quite extraordinary. Australians need a Prime Minister who's focused on the job that they're given. Nothing about the last government was real, not even the government itself.
Prime Minister, we've learned that having sworn himself in as Resources Minister, Scott Morrison used that power to cancel a gas exploration project about 50 k's off the New South Wales coast. Would you have supported that PEP 11 project had you been Prime Minister at the time?
Well, I wasn't. That's the point. The Prime Minister at the time was also the Minister for Resources at the time, and we know that if you are the Minister for the Environment or the Minister for Immigration or the Minister for Resources, a range of portfolios have within the legislation that's provided a responsibility for the Minister to make a decision separate from the Prime Minister or from Cabinet processes, bearing in mind all of the information that is available to that Minister. Now, the fact that Minister Pitt disagreed with the decision that was made by the Prime Minister as the Minister for Resources as well as Minister Pitt is quite extraordinary. I don't think it's clear whether Minister Pitt was aware that his role had been usurped. I think PEP 11 raised, I was on the record raising my concerns about the project, as was a range of people in the Labor Party about that. We asked questions in the Parliament about the PEP 11 project to the Minister for Resources. There was an obligation upon the Prime Minister at that point in time, if not beforehand, to actually reveal what the arrangements were. This isn't some, local footy club. This is the government of Australia, where the people of Australia were kept in the dark as to what the ministerial arrangements were. It's completely unacceptable. There's an absolute need for clear transparency to come through here. And it's not as if the journalists who've written about some of this weren't in close contact with the government from time to time about issues that were raised by the former government. But it's clear that the Australian people deserve explanations. This is very contrary to our Westminster system. It is unbecoming, it was cynical, and it was just weird that this has occurred. And Australians will be scratching their head today knowing that the government that they thought was there wasn't actually the Australian government at all.